Olivia, thank you so much for your time. I'm pretty sure you've got your hands full. You've got a game to make. You have a life to live. But thanks for talking to myself and Richard from the Nerds of Color.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
First and foremost, how has the year been for you? Your team adjusting to the new normal? What's going on with
It
y'all?
has it's been a long year. Yeah, we've been working from home for a while even before this, so, but it was still an adjustment process just with the way that everything was changing. But I mean, the good news is that it's given us access to do lots of sort of online festivals to show off the game, a lot more networking opportunities that way. And so in some ways it's opened us up in different ways because we're from sort of a rural town. Part of the country. There's not a huge game dev scene, and so getting more of these sort of online opportunities has actually been really nice in some ways. Um, Not so nice on our mental health just because of everything, but
Right.
Right.
yeah, in terms of the studio, it's been an interesting mixed bag, I guess.
I know for sure I wouldn't have been able to do, I think, 90% of what I'm doing now if I couldn't do it remotely. So, like, getting to talk with
Yeah.
folks like yourself and just getting to reach out to people in general, yeah,
Mhm.
a little bit of good coming out of this craziness. But glad to hear that you're doing well and so is the team. Could you talk a little bit about To the Rescue and how it came into being? Rich and I were wondering earlier, like, was someone working in a shelter and thought, hey, this could be a game? Or was it just sort of a little more organic?
Yeah, well, first I'll start with just like a general overview of what the game is, if that's okay. Um,
For sure.
because yeah, To the Rescue is a dog shelter simulator, so you're going to be doing things like taking care of dogs one on one, but also doing higher level management tasks. Because we really want to emphasize, the sort of personableness of interacting with dogs at the dog shelter, but it's also a sim management game, so you're going to be doing the sort of higher level resource management as well. Um, but as far as how it came into being, it's sort of been a long, ongoing process for us. We first started working on it when we meaning myself and the other main lead developer, who's also my partner. We started working on it as a hobbyist project in undergrad, but we realized it had a whole lot of potential because the more we got into it, and us being dog owners and who had lots of friends and stuff who were really involved with shelter work, and we just realized that we were surprised that this story wasn't getting told, and we really wanted to highlight some of the good things and the bad things about running a dog shelter.
Right.
And yes, slowly, like the more we learned about it, we just kept coming up with cool mechanics, and we're just really happy to see how much the idea resonated with people.
I guess what I was going to ask while you're getting into it is, like, what were some of the games that helped inspire the playstyle and art style of To the Rescue? Reminds me of similar indie style games with the same kind of objectives or the same kind of purpose. Um, and the art style is so unique too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you. I mean, it's hard to pin down a few specific references just because inspiration comes from everywhere. But
Right.
sorry, I have to name this dog. I have to pick my dog. So for my dog. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of gameplay, we took inspiration from lots of other sim management games on that were doing different things. Like Prison Architect is a really big one for us, but the real problem we had with sort of emulating that exact format was that we wanted it to be a little bit more personal. Like I mentioned, having that one-on-one interaction. And so, to that end, we looked towards Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing and those sorts of games.
Mm.
Yeah. Yep.
But also, we got some inspiration from some weird places too, relative to the genre we're working in. Because we're dealing with some sensitive subjects in some places. We were really interested in the stuff that some narrative games like Mortician's Tale were the sort of direction those were taking. Because that game, I'm not sure if you've heard of it,
No, I was going to ask
is
what kind of game is that?
it's a real short, really interesting narrative game about about being a mortician, where the
Mm,
gameplay is doing these sort of procedures on bodies, and then also having to speak with and talk to and console their families. It's a
Mm.
really brilliant, really powerful game. Um, and we were just really, interested in how they approached that subject and how they made it, they brought it down to like a human level and really made it really they made it still fun, but also really really powerful in that way.
right.
the subject matter in this game isn't quite as dark or deep as Mortician's Tale, but we do touch on some things that can be a little bit hard to deal with sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was something we were really looking at, as well as games that approach those subjects in interesting ways. In terms of art style too, I mean that really was almost completely our art director's doing. He does lots of sort of simplistic graphic work that's really masterfully done. He does lots of design work, and coming into this project, it went over several different art iterations. Like if you look at our Kickstarter, the game looks totally different than it does right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm.
and yeah, and so we really wanted to sort of capture that sort of coziness of some of these sim games that are um with a bright color palette and stuff like that, but also we wanted to be able to have enough detail to capture the personalities of the dogs, because there's 29 different dog appearance variants, and even though we don't refer to them in game by their breed names, we really wanted them to capture different sorts of personalities that dogs have.
Right.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So what's going on right now in the game? You're just kind of like walking into the shelter?
Yeah, so I started off in the story mode, which right now for the demo, the story mode and the sandbox mode is actually very similar.
Hmm.
Essentially, the sandbox just skips over all these story cutscenes. They'll be a little bit more different in the final version of the game. Um, but yes, the story starts out with a player who just moved to a new neighborhood, and a stray puppy shows up, and they take that puppy to the local shelter like a responsible citizen. But as it turns out, this shelter is actually what's called a closed admission shelter, which means that since they're full, they uh they can't take the dog. And so we have to, as this, and I'm sorry if I'm clicking through the dialogue quickly. I'm just trying to summarize as we get through to the actual meat of the gameplay here in a little bit. But as they're explaining here, the player is actually going to end up building a kennel to take care of the dog themselves,
Right, right. It's interesting
and
because
starts their journey.
yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting that you guys wanted to also highlight the realities of, the shelter. Um, and honestly, I really respect that. I think that's super important to kind of highlight. And I was gonna ask, what was it like finding that balance between the reality of the shelter life and some of the more lighthearted and playful aspects of the game?
It's something that honestly we're still working on it to some degree, but
Hmm.
and it really just took a lot of iteration and a lot of talking to shelter workers, right? Because
Right.
what we want to, we don't want to misrepresent like what people are doing and what this is like, but we still want it to be a fun game, like I mentioned. So yeah, it just took a lot of iteration and a lot of capturing like both the highs and lows, but
Yeah.
making the highs feel like there's always sort of that hope. Like it never gets hopeless, even when it gets a little bit sad,
Mm-hmm.
right? We really tried to make sure that um, for every dog that comes in sick that's really hard to take care of, you might have an adopter that's just the perfect person that comes in looking for that exact sort of dog. And so having that moment of like connection that, some dog that you were losing hope, you're losing you were expecting to maybe have to take care of them forever, or maybe even have to euthanize or send them away,
Right.
and then
Hmm.
you get lucky and you get that one adopter, and that sort of moment is the thing that we were really latching onto, and making sure that we captured both of those things.
Mm.
As you can see here, so we have our kennel at our house. We can check out the dog now that we have. Every dog has, in addition to what they look like, they also have different traits and preferences.
Hmm.
This dog's a puppy retriever, which is pretty good, and he is also high energy. So as you can see, the traits represent their behavior, but they also have the potential to have health statuses as well, which can also affect their adoptability rating, which we'll see a little bit more about their adoptability rating later.
So, I was gonna ask because if there's anything that's got like little creatures in it, my mind immediately goes to Pokemon. Are there any
Yeah.
like RNG elements, or is it like at the beginning there's always that same dog, this puppy golden retriever that appears outside? Are there ever moments where like a different dog might appear instead of the one that happens, or is it's predetermined through the
In
like main story at least?
Yeah, through the main story, there's some predetermined ones that are the same every time, but later on, when you get to your own shelter, every dog that comes in is unique.
Oh, cool.
With the exception of some
Ooh.
special rare super dogs that might show up that
Oh, wow.
are fun little Easter egg dogs. But
Oh, that's so
um,
cool.
That's cool.
yeah,
I feel like the potential for like movie dogs or like TV show dogs is really
yeah,
endless.
so far we've been avoiding actual license actual
Right.
license concerns.
Of
But
course.
yeah, and it was one of our Kickstarter backer rewards actually was to get their dogs put into the game. So we got a lot of friends in the community represented with their dogs in the game.
That's really cool.
And
Also,
our own,
this
of
part of the
course.
map is so expansive. Where did we just get a look at? Because
Yeah,
that
that
was a
is the
lot.
dog park, which is
Wow.
it's just a set piece that is
Oh.
a nice place that a few different cutscenes happen during the main story. Most of the game actually just takes place within one setting, which is the shelter itself. But you do get to see a little bit more of the broader community. Because that's one thing that after talking to real shelters was really, really important to them was that they were part of their community and that the things that they do in their community is really important, which is one of the reasons that we take this approach to the story where we are trying to show that community and make it a little bit less about just the shelter but also about the broader place that the shelter occupies and the people and the dogs that they're trying to help. um so yeah, so we just that cutscene really just served just showing that a little bit. It does
Mhm.
come back later on, but not in the demo, unfortunately.
Got you.
So right now we're getting a phone call that is letting us know that the shelter got a call from the dog's owner, thanks to those posters that we put up, and they found the owner. But in addition to finding the owner, they also offer us a job to, because of our our gumption in trying to find that dog's owner. They offer us a job at their shelter. But for the demo, it's actually
Ooh.
going to skip over that whole section of the story that takes place at that other shelter.
Hmm.
Mhm.
We're gonna jump straight to the end where we have our own shelter.
Oh,
So I'm
cool.
That's
going
cool.
to skip the tutorial because I know how to play the game. And yeah, the demo is a little bit odd because that tutorial is actually the sandbox mode tutorial. So it's a little bit deceptive, and so there's a little bit of duplicate information in there. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so as a tour, over here on the right is what's called the holding kennel. And this is where all new dogs arrive at the shelter. So we got a good variety here, it
Oh
looks
my
like.
god.
We got Nugget and Araparo. Araparo is one of our backer supplied names as well.
That's such a
which
cute name. I
find
was gonna
really
say,
Oh
cute.
my
what a
gosh.
cute
I
name.
like Araparo,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
That's
Rhubarb,
another cute name.
Frost, and Boogie.
Oh,
So
Boogie.
got a really a really good variety here. I had one of the demos I ran. It had 5 dogs with the exact same appearance spawn, and I was like, well, great. That doesn't show. That doesn't show the cool dogs that we have.
Right. That's
And
cool.
we have our companion here, who is mostly just an aesthetic choice, so you can sort of put your own dog in the game, and they're sort of just there to answer questions and hang out and help supervise.
Oh my
That
god,
is so
that
charming.
animation was so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of our it's all hand animated too. So
Wow.
and our animator
Mm.
is amazing. So-
Clearly, because this is the type of stuff that Richard understands more than I do. When we talk about like the gaming stuff we like to do, I'm more the narrative side, but
uh-huh.
yeah, the actual like design stuff and the crap that goes into making it happen. Yeah, I'll leave that. I'll
Yeah.
leave that to y'all because it looks amazing, but I'm sure it's not easy.
Yes, there's a lot, especially in a sim game. There's so much. There's just so much. But anyway, so the first thing we're actually gonna do now that we are here in our own shelter is build some kennels. So I mentioned earlier that in the game you do like the management tasks, like the upkeep of the dogs, but you also do the higher level management tasks, like building a shelter and expanding it, upgrading things, buying supplies, spending skill points, all that sort of stuff happens here at the computer.
Mm.
So yeah, there's the dog log, which is a nice handy reference where you can just sort of quickly glance and see the sort of dogs available to you. You can also unlock a foster network if you want, which is a good way to sort of get some more room. There is the shop, which is where you buy supplies like more food, medicines, first aid kits, and also a few different types of upgrades you can get here.
Mm.
So yeah, there's lots of stuff that is locked here, but by default we have our basic kennels, which can hold 1 dog in them.
Okay.
And since I have 5 dogs in the shelter right now, I'm actually going to build a few extra just in case some more show up.
Mm-hmm.
And the upgrades allow you to hold multiple dogs in one kennel, as well as are made of different, more durable materials and things like that. And eventually you can even do things like upgrade them with cushions, and if you have a lot of extra money, you can give them TVs and all kinds of fun stuff. If we want a real deluxe dog palace, but not today.
Uh, I was gonna ask. I'm actually curious. So if you have like a kennel that fits like more than one dog,
Uh-huh.
and is it possible for like, if a dog had like fleas to pass it to another dog?
Absolutely. So there are actually 4 different sort of transmissible diseases. We sort of abstract them, so that I
Yeah.
would consider that to be like a parasite,
Right.
probably. So yeah, and they are transmissible by proximity. You can put them in a quarantine kennel. Which actually, I'll go show you. Over here on the left is the sort of medical room, where there's a special kennel that won't let disease transmit, and then there's 4
Oh.
different types of treatments. And you
Oh
can
wow.
pre-vaccinate them, but it can be a little bit expensive. But it's actually a nice way to boost the adoptability of the dog.
Nice.
So actually, we got really lucky, and a new visitor showed up, wanting to adopt a dog. Which usually it takes a little bit longer in the day for that to happen. So we got lucky. So I'm going to go down there and talk to them. Um, Dog care is sort of your main core loop, but whenever a visitor comes, you usually want to address them so that you can get adoptions taken care of, because that's your goal is
Would
to
they
get
would they
as
ever
many
like
dogs.
leave, or is there a kind of a penalty kind of
They will
system,
leave
or?
at the end of the day,
Okay.
and the day ends at. If you see the clock on the top right,
Gotcha.
it ends at
Mm.
6 p.m. 6 p.m. Yeah, I was trying to remember. Um, so yeah, you have quite a bit of time, but yeah, so they will leave eventually. So what I just did here is I used this item, which is called the ribbons, to teleport the dogs to these special kennels. Because when adopters are looking for a dog, they will only look at the dogs that are in these kennels.
Mm.
And the
Okay.
reason for that is because we really want to have the player choose which dogs to show which adopter. Um, so that you have to know a little bit about your dogs.
Right.
And you can show them up to 5. It's typically better to show them as many as possible.
Hmm.
In this case, he's looking for a shepherd dog. And you can show them whatever type of dog you want, but if they match what they're looking for, they're going to be a little bit more likely to adopt that dog. Um, so in this case, we have at least one shepherd, which is really nice. And the shepherd is a category. It's not just German shepherds. Uh, each breed category has 4 different size variants in them, so that's a little bit more of like a category than a specific dog breed.
Okay.
And yeah, so during the adoptions, they will go and they will look at each and every dog that you show them and rate them based on their adoptability and also based on their preferences. And each star that the dog has on its adoptability score contributes to the meter at the top, which sort of represents the adopter's resistance to adopting. And so
Oh,
if we
okay.
meet that threshold, like we just did, they will pick one of the dogs to adopt, depending on how much they contributed to that score.
Okay.
I see.
Arrow
Hello,
Para!
Pharaoh.
It's your moment, little friend. Goodbye. Okay, so
Wow,
that was
so
nice. So we got
charming.
an adoption on the first day. Um, and so yeah, adoptions give you an adoption fee, but you also get reputation from it. I've mentioned reputation a few times. It's one of the
Hmm.
2 main resources you manage, which is just your money and your reputation. Sorry, I'm a little bit slow because Pickles is pulling on me. Okay, good job, Pickles. Um, and reputation represents sort of what the community thinks about you as a shelter. Because you can neglect dogs by not feeding or watering them.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
If you euthanize dogs or send too many of them away, there's lots of different ways that you can lose reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And you can eventually get the shelter shut down by doing it too often.
Oh wow.
Oh.
So you have to manage both your funds to stay open as well as your reputation. But no, if you're taking care of dogs and getting adoptions, it's not too difficult to manage your reputation, but it's definitely an important resource to make sure that you're taking care of the dogs as opposed to just making money.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm. So what would like, I guess, a hectic day at the shelter look like for players?
There's lots of those. Yeah, so a hectic day consists of, there's lots of different things. Like if disease breaks out in the middle of the day when you're low on money and
Hmm.
low on vaccines, and then a visitor shows up and you don't have time, You can, so diseases can be very very problematic if they pop up at the wrong time and start spreading because they get very expensive to treat.
Right.
Also, just the more dogs you have, the more dogs you have to feed, and keep track of who's who, and making sure that they are, like, especially if you have multiple dog kennels, sometimes dogs' personalities, they won't get along with each other, and so you have to,
Ooh.
try and separate them. Things like that can happen. So so the game actually does get pretty hectic pretty quickly. Luckily, you actually can hire helpers to autonomously do some of the basic tasks for you, so you can be
Oh,
more
okay.
worried about the important stuff like the adoptions themselves. Oh no,
Right.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Um, I forgot that I had to actually show them dogs to get them to adopt dogs. So they're looking for a peaceful dog. So as we can see here, this dog is an all-star. So and the adoptability ratings on the dogs is calculated based on their traits. So some traits are really valuable, like being quiet and being playful and being a puppy. Those are things that lots of adopters are looking for. And so they
Mm.
make them appear just more appealing to adopters in general. Um, Whereas there's other traits that are generally considered to be negative traits, like if there's a dog that is really barky, or a dog that bites, or
Okay.
those are things that you need
Right.
to look out for. You can still find the right home for them, but it does contribute to their adoptability negatively. So yeah, so that number is based on their traits and how well taken care of they are. But we're gonna get this adoption super easily because in addition to having lots of dogs that are what she's looking for, her resistance is actually quite low.
Oh, right. That red bar is like
Yeah.
half of the other, or not even, like a lot less than
Uh-huh.
that. The previous
And you
tab.
can pick up on over time, like there's little cues to the way that they describe what they're looking for that will give you hints as to when they are more or less resistant. Um, oh my god, let me check out the time. I've just been sitting here talking nonstop. Do y'all have any other questions? Like, because I've been just going on and on. I haven't
No.
let
This
you get
is
a word in.
this is essentially what we wanted to get at, and it's what we wanted to feature, especially for the interview, is what's going on in the game, because we got the background from you before and a little bit throughout.
Yeah.
But we want you to get to showcase what's going on, because this looks incredible and it's incredibly thoughtful too.
Yeah.
So we absolutely wanted you to showcase this.
Great, yeah. Well, I've just been having a good time. Honestly, I've been distracted because I this is probably the best luck I've had with like the pacing of the game. I've had a couple people not get any visitors at all, and it's
Nice.
been a whole thing.
We
So
brought the good vibes,
yeah,
so it
you
worked
did.
out.
Yay.
I guess
So
the
I mentioned dogs with negative traits. I just wanted to highlight this is one of them that has a few negative traits. So
Ooh, I
we
see.
have bad with dogs,
Oh yeah.
as well as shedding prone and arthritis because they're older.
Mm.
So,
Ooh.
but they're intelligent, which is a really positive trait, so it ends up sort of averaging out. But it's definitely something to keep in mind when putting them in and near other dogs.
Right.
I just wanted to highlight that really quickly because this is an example of one of the generated ones. And yeah, because we really wanted to highlight that when people come to adopt dogs, they're more likely to adopt puppies and dogs that are already trained or that are
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
purebred. But
Mm-hmm.
most dogs
Mhm.
that show up at a shelter aren't any of those things. So,
Yeah.
um,
That is true.
It's really intricate, though. This is a really genuine display of what it is like to work at a shelter and then have it be in the form of a video game, because it's not just on the surface. You've broken down some really interesting mechanics and intricate mechanics
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely.
I guess one of the last things before we let you go, where can folks find out more about To the Rescue and get updates online and follow more of your work and your team's work?
social media obviously is our best. But we're really active on Twitter, especially at To the Rescue Game is the game's main page. We also have one for our studio at Play LR Games. And also, the best thing you can do to help follow us and for the big announcements and things like that is just to straight up wishlist us on Steam. We'll post and follow us as well because big announcements get posted there. And then when the game comes out, you'll get a nice alert. So so that would definitely be the place to go.
Olivia, we really appreciate your time. The game is just so beautiful and thoughtful and just sweet and charming. We're excited for folks to get their hands on it. We're excited for the work you're going to do in the future, no doubt. And again, we really appreciate getting to talk to you, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you so much, and yeah, thank you for your interest in the game and everything. And one other thing I wanted to mention too is that in addition to making a game that shows running a shelter and all this information about that puts players in the shoes of someone running a shelter, is one thing that we wanted to do is actually make a little bit of a real world difference. It's just why we're actually going to be donating 20% of our profits to the Pet Finder Foundation when the game comes
Wow.
out. So,
Oh
Wow.
wow.
we're really, really excited to be partnering with them because they are a great cause. So yeah, definitely check out the Pet Finder Foundation too if you're listening and interested in figuring out ways to help real world dogs.
Kudos to you and your team for doing that as well,
Oh yeah.
because it
Thank
just
you.
communicates your commitment to the overall message of what this game is about. And we really appreciate it. So thank you again, Olivia.
Thank you so much. And we're going to be releasing this game fall on PC, Mac, and Switch.